Listen to me. Oh, wow. I despise. Cause it means destruction of innocent lives. War means tears to thousands of mothers die when their sons go off to fight and lose their lives. I said war. Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely. Get said again. War. Lord. What is it good for? Absolutely. Nothing. Listen to me. War. It ain't nothing but a heartbreak. War. Friend only to the undertaker. Oh, war. So they told you the wars were over. They told you for the man I voted for 3 times was different. I told you he was different. I believe he was different. They told you this time it was justified. They told you Congress didn't need to vote. They just told you trust the plan. Well, I'm here to tell you, I think they lied to us a little bit. Think they lied to us just a little bit. Welcome to the Radical Republicans Live Show. And of course, I am your host, Chief Jarome Bell. 27 years, United States Navy, retired, uncensored, unfiltered, unedited, unscripted, and always unapologetic truth here in the Lion's Den. So right now, as you watch this, American men and women are in harm's way in the Persian Gulf. And of course, we send them our prayers and the prayers to their family members because we are at war with Iran. Not declared, not voted on, not authorized by Congress as the Constitution demands. It's just happening because Washington decided that it would happen, and the rest of us are supposed to just shut up and let it go on. Well, tonight, we're not just going to wave the flag. Not on this show, not tonight. Tonight, I do have 2 guests who are going to give you a complete picture. First, a combat Marine officer who flew Cobra, attack helicopters in Iraq, who commanded men in Operation Iraqi Freedom, who knows exactly what is happening to our troops out there right now. And we are in the process of, from what I'm hearing, sending 5,000 more on amphibious ships, MEWs as they call them. Then a New York Times best-selling author who has been documenting the lies and the pattern that keeps getting us into these wars for decades. So we got 2 different angles, 1 devastating truth. So stay with me, share this stream because we are talking about life and death tonight. And like I told you all last week, I have a son in the United States Air Force. So when I say this is personal, I mean every single word of it. But before anything else tonight, I need to say some names. Captain Cody Cork, 35 years old, Winter Haven, Florida. Sergeant First Class Noah Tegens, 42 years old, Bellevue, Nebraska. Sergeant First Class Nicole Amore, 39 years old, White Bear Lake, Minnesota. Specialist Declan Cody, 20 years old, West Des Moines, Iowa. Major Jeffrey O'Brien, 45 years old, Indianola, Iowa. A brother, Chief Warrant Officer Robert Marzan, 54 years old, Sacramento, California. 6 United States Army Reserve soldiers killed by a single Iranian drone March 1st, Port Shuaba, Kuwait. A United States Marine Corps Lance Corporal Kevin Melendez killed March 4th, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Sergeant Benjamin Pennington, 26 years old, Glendale, Kentucky, died of wounds at Prince Sultan Air Base, Saudi Arabia, March 9th. And 6 United States Air Force airmen, all of their names have not been released yet, killed March 12th when their KC-135 refueling tanker went down in western Iraq. And their families are, I'm sure, being notified still as you watch this show, if they haven't already been notified. It's been a couple of days. So those are not statistics. Those are sons, those are fathers, those are daughters, mothers, possibly. Those are somebody's everything. I think we're up to 14 Americans dead now, 140 plus wounded, 8 of them still fighting for their lives right now. And unfortunately, like President Trump callously said, there will be more. There will be more. He said that. And like I said, I have a son in the United States Air Force, so I'm not speaking from a position of a comfortable distance tonight. I feel this. Every military parent in America feels this. And we deserve the truth about how we got here and where we're going. This is a constitutional crisis, in my opinion. So let me be direct. Again, we are at war, a real war. American blood is being spilled. Iran has struck 27 U.S. bases across the Middle East, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, the UAE. The Strait of Hormuz has been disrupted or closed. Global oil shipments have been affected. Hezbollah has activated from Lebanon. Iranian-backed Iraqi militias have launched dozens of attacks on U.S. forces. We have an immediate get out of Iraq call from our State Department. Leave Iraq as soon as possible. So this is not a limited strike. This is not a surgical operation. This is a war. And Congress, the body that Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution requires to declare war, has done absolutely nothing. Not one vote, not one authorization. And of course, the American people were never asked. I don't care if you love this president or hate Iran. The process matters. The oath matters. And right now, that oath is being broken at the highest levels of our government while our kids are out there dying. I voted for President Trump 3 times. 3 times I was all in. I believed him when he said America first meant no more forever wars. I believed him when he said he was going to end these foreign entanglements. I campaigned for him. I defended him. I was on the stage at Mar-a-Lago shaking his hand. So let me ask you this. Is this America first, or is this the same neocon playbook with a MAGA hat on top? The 1% start these wars. The 99% fights them and buries the dead. And the people sitting in those marble palaces in Washington, the ones who never served, who never pumped their own gas, who never checked a bank account before buying groceries, they will sleep just fine tonight while Gold Star families are being made. But that ends with me tonight. But tonight we get the truth. We get the truth. So my first guest tonight flew Cobra attack helicopters in combat. He commanded Marines in Iraq during Operation Iraqi Freedom as commanding officer of HMLA 369, the Gunfighters. He spent 33 years in the United States Marine Corps, rising from private to sergeant to colonel. He founded Strategic Resilience Group to support U.S. national security missions, and he wrote a book called Gunfighters Rule. It tells the story of what it actually means to serve. Colonel William Berner, welcome to the Radical Republicans Live Show, sir. How are you doing today? I got you on mute, sir. Can you pop your mute button for me? Sorry about that. There you go. There you go.
There we go. That.
I just came to.
Okay, say that again, Colonel. Is your mic on?
How you got me now?
I got you now, man. Thank you.
All right, outstanding.
All right. So welcome, man. We call this the Lion's Den. I appreciate you coming in and giving us your time tonight, Colonel. And I guess the first question I'll just lead off with is Berner. So tell the audience where that call sign comes from. And before we get into the analysis, go ahead, and I want them to understand who they're hearing from, because you've actually been in harm's way. So walk us through what that means, because there are people on TV right now who've never been anywhere near it.
Okay. All right. No, that sounds great. So long story short, the call sign Berner came from back in the day. I used to like to drink a little and fight a little. So we'll just leave it at that, because that's the version. But yeah, I spent my life in the Marine Corps. I joined when I was 17, right out of high school, enlisted, went to college in the reserves, got commissioned 88. And then basically from that point on, we've been in war at some level. The first thing that I remember is 1983 Beirut bombing. October 23rd, 241 of our brothers were destroyed by Hezbollah, backed from Iran. So one of the things I want all the listeners to understand is this is not new. We've been fighting Iran. Iran has been killing American citizens since 1983 that I remember, and right after 1979 when they really fell apart. So I grow up in the Marine Corps, go to college, Old Dominion University, and then I get commissioned, and then I become a Cobra pilot. Did multiple tours, been to Somalia, did a bunch of things, and then all of a sudden OIF-1 comes up. So I go into OIF-1 on the ground as a forward air controller. We're the 1st Marine Battalion into Baghdad. We fought our way there. We roll into Baghdad, and it was shockingly peaceful. And then from there, we rolled down to Karbala. We spent some time down there. And right then and there is when we started the longest war in America, when we fired the Iraqi military, we fired the interim government, and obviously we fired the government because we took them out. So that's something that cannot take place here in Iran. So I did that tour, came back, and then I ended up back in Iraq as a Cobra pilot, flying for the squadron I'm going to get ready to take command of. And then I took command of the gunfighters, took them back into combat. And during that time, and this is the thing I want the listeners also to remember, many of our brothers and sisters were killed by Iranian proxies that gave explosively formed penetrators to our enemies from the money that a previous administration gave to Iran. So this is not new. Iran's been killing us and killing Americans by the truckload. And, I don't doubt, and like you say, Chief, I don't take one single death for granted. And we've lost a lot. And every one of these brothers and sisters that are now gone, their family will never get them back. And I do agree, unfortunately, I've got a bad feeling in my stomach that there will be more casualties and more deaths, because we are at an undeclared war. It's, I guess they're calling it an action, but I do believe it was appropriate and we had to do it. The reason why I say that is after I gave up command of the gunfighters, I then get promoted to colonel, and I end up being a MU commander. But before that, I was a MAG commander, and I went back in the theater to set the theater when General Mattis was sent COM to do probably this mission. We went there to set the theater. We thought in a war with Iran was going to take place then. And my Marines were ready to go to war. And I still have a calendar I keep in my office to remind me of this. I wrote on the calendar, and this was in 2012, war begins. And that's when I thought the war was going to kick off all the way back in 2012. Should it have happened then? I don't know. But the one thing we got to be positive of, Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. And they were probably a lot closer than we think. I do believe intel is amazing. And I also think this. It's also possible, and I do profess this a lot, that we also not only go to war sometimes for enemy nuclear weapons, but we probably sometimes go to war for Israeli nuclear weapons to prevent them from using them because they may have no choice. So given a choice of Iran getting a nuclear weapon and or Israel having to feel they had to use a nuclear weapon to stop this fight or stop themselves from being exterminated, then I think we did the right thing.
All right, so Iran has struck 27 U.S. bases across the Middle East. I mentioned those IED, Navy's 5th Command, 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, bases in Kuwait, Jordan, Iraq, Saudi Arabia. We've confirmed, some KIAs there, unfortunately. And I said their names at the top of the show. So from a pure operational standpoint, right now, how would you describe the current threat environment for the U.S. forces in the region right now? Because I've been in Bahrain. I've stayed in that hotel that was bombed.
Yeah.
I've been there a lot, in the 5th Fleet. So how would you describe the current threat environment?
It's serious threat. But we often forget that prior to this war, if you will call it that, Iran struck over 200 times, almost 300 times on different bases throughout the Middle East during the Biden administration with zero retaliation. They bombed us at will. They sent in missiles. They sent in drones. While they were attacking Israel, they attacked us over and over again. Now, fortunately, and during most of those attacks, the casualties were very light. But right now, it is very dangerous. Iran is a capable foe. And the one thing that always concerns me when we have great success, like we're having now in the tactical and operational level, we're having great success. That always concerns me because what do we as Marine soldiers and sailors sometimes do when we are kicking everybody's butt? Sometimes we let our guard down.
We relax, yeah.
and I did that once in Iraq on top of the Ministry of Petroleum. I let my guard down for a second and almost got whacked out because I let my guard down, and I never made that mistake again. But that's my concern right now is if any of our brothers and sisters out there, if they let their guard down, it makes it very dangerous. And hopefully they won't, because I think they realize how serious all this is, and hopefully they won't let it down.
Well, is this level of Iranian retaliation, is this what the military planners anticipated? Because I feel like we've been taken a little off guard here. And, just because, I guess we, short ammo, they said we've been short ammo. So is this what they really anticipated from Iran, this level?
Absolutely. We always planned they're going to shut the Straits of Hormuz. That's always a plan. We know they're going to do it. They play right into our playbook by doing that because we expected it. Their Navy's gone. I'm surprised we got rid of it that quickly. I knew it would be quick, but I was surprised it was that quick. What I think is going to happen now is we're going to secure the Straits, prevent them from any action there, or at least reduce that action. We got the 31st MEU on the way. They're going to have Cobras and jets that are going to go out there and wreak havoc on those small boats. But once again, very dangerous. Attacking their neighbors, that did surprise me a little bit. I assumed they would attack our bases. I did not plan. The one thing that they surprised me is they attacked civilian targets. And that was I think that was a mistake on their part, number one. You can justify to your neighbor if you attack a U.S. military base when they're being bombed by U.S. military. But when you attack a civilian airport or you attack a civilian hotel, you can't justify that. It shows the craziness of this regime and the fact that they really don't know what they're doing. But that was the only surprise. But all the military targets, absolutely. We have people that are in the Middle East. Every one of them were off their base when those strikes came in. My men have a place in Kuwait. That building is gone. It was basically a Connex box. Apparently, I haven't been there in a while, but apparently it's gone. They weren't in it. So we knew they were going to do this, fully expected. And I think this mission is going to close out before too long, I hope. And I think we will see, you never know, right? Because the enemy has a say, but I think we're going to see dramatically that this was the right call. What I'm concerned about is boots on the ground. There's some reasons I believe, and like I say, this is just my opinion. I believe at some point we will have some boots on the ground somewhere in Iran, and that's a concern for me because I've been boots on the ground
in Iraq. Yeah, I
and it's
feel
very
you.
dangerous.
It is, and it's a different terrain there too. You got those mountains, even much more than Iraq. You have those mountain regions in Iran that would be, I think, a big problem. But here's what's haunting me. We've had, I guess, six. I think their precision of their rockets were, I think, a surprise because when they took out 5 radars from in 3 or 4 different countries and pretty much left us blind as far as the Patriot missiles, and our military budget, I mean, one drone, they took out one, with one drone, and our military budget, it dwarfs, Iran's dwarfs ours. So their entire military budget is smaller than, let's say, the GDP of Vermont. And they were still able to kill Americans with cheap drones. So as a Cobra pilot, you were the attack asset. So now drones are the attack asset. So what does that shift like that mean, and what does it tell us about the way warfare has modernized?
Oh, it's a massive shift. Massive shift. Now you can take you want to call them a third world country or you want to call them Iran, and you can put them into the playing field with $10,000 drones or $20,000 drones that can wreak havoc on a sophisticated force. Absolutely. That is the way of warfare, though. That is the progression, if you will, is a low cost drone. We saw it dramatically in Ukraine. Now we're seeing it. Is it possible a drone gets through and hits one of our ships? Absolutely. We have to find and destroy the drone making capability. We have to find and destroy any drones they have. And then we really have to improve our anti-drone capability. We're seeing that it's not sufficient. And, I see this drone problem everywhere. I spent some time at Cherry Point, and I was always worried about the drone threat there because anyone can fly a drone just about anywhere in the United States at least one time. You may get caught, but the drone threat is a real scary capability that a very non-sophisticated enemy can become pretty sophisticated with a Walmart drone and a bag of explosives.
And with that, like I said, that Iran hadn't just hit military targets. The airports in Dubai, Kuwait, oil refineries in Bahrain, data centers in the UAE. Like say, Bahrain, the Fifth Fleet headquarters, and they're firing from Lebanon. So we got Iranian-backed and Iraqi militias. They've launched dozens of attacks. So this is Iran's entire proxy network activating simultaneously, and the Houthis haven't really got involved yet. So as a commander, because I think they can even, cause a lot of havoc on shipping in the Red Sea because they've done that just last year. We've been in that battle with them almost to a stalemate. So as a commander, how do you fight a war on that many fronts at once?
Well, that was Iraq in a way, right? Iraq, you walk down the street, you look at some people and you think they're friendly, and next thing you know, they're shooting at you. And our men and women face that, all over Iraq for 20 years. There is no front line. It doesn't matter whether you're a cook or whether you're a Cobra guy or an infantry Marine. There's no place that's completely safe. What I think we're seeing, and I believe this, is that the proxies are really sitting this one out. They are not massively engaged. They are not massively supporting. They're tacitly supporting. I think what they're doing is they've realized that Iran is lost as a benefactor, if you will, to their proxies. I think they realize Iran is gone, and now what they're doing is they're saving up for whatever is going to be their next fight. I don't see them getting all in and getting all involved. There's been a campaign, a process against these proxies, and we've really reduced Hamas. We've really reduced Hezbollah, and I think they're going to sit this out. But you'll see a little bit of support here and there, but in a massive retaliation, I don't think we'll see, because I think they realize that it's just a matter of days, if not a week or two, before this regime has been wiped out in Iran. And I believe, this is again my opinion, I believe the second Ayatollah is either incapacitated or dead, because one of the things that is prevalent in the Middle East is wasta. And if you survive an attack, you have wasta. So you get out and you show your people you're alive, even if it's by video. And by him not doing that, it's telling me there's something, dreadfully wrong with him. Now that could be an information warfare plan that they're doing, but I believe that he is not in control and not in command.
Yeah, I believe that as well. So, like you mentioned, President Trump and Pete Hegseth, they're openly talking about boots on the ground. I believe we see that. I believe that's going to happen. I pray it does not. Because like I say, I've been there and you commanded troops in Iraq. So, and it took 20 years. Iraq took 20 years, trillions of dollars, 4 presidents. And when we replaced the Taliban in Afghanistan with the Taliban, we've done that.
Yeah.
So, and Iran is 3 times the size with a more capable military. I think, with more capable, I believe, munitions, because I don't think we have an answer for the hypersonic. If they're launching hypersonics on Israel, nothing can shoot down a hypersonic right now, not that I know of anyway. So what action are we looking at if we go boots on the ground in Iran?
Well, I would tell you the way I would do this. First of all, I would not put boots on the ground unless I truly have the blessing of the majority, at least the vast majority of the Iranian people, and then in Iranian interim government. Where I believe we would do it is on the islands. It was, I don't want to call it funny, but I was looking at the geography and I told my wife, we're going to start hitting the islands, and the next day we hit Karg Island. So what I could see us doing is putting units near or on the islands that will allow us to basically protect, if you will, the straits. And I could see that taking place. We want to get rid of the fast attack boat threat. And then obviously we want to keep fighting this drone threat. And I think we're going to do that. I was a MEU commander, and the 31st MEU is a very capable MEU. We don't usually send in the MEU unless the MEU's got a mission. Sometimes that mission is just to sit off the coast and wait, and that could be, but it does concern me. It's a concern. It wrenches my stomach to think of Marines being on the ground in Iran. We've always talked about that. Iran can swallow up an Army infantry division, swallow it up. It's just so vast. And the logistics footprint to do that is immense. So I think if boots on the ground are going to be right there on the coast, right along the ports, right along the straits. And that's my belief. And I hope I'm right. I would hate to see us, putting Marines deep in country. Just, it's tough.
So if your Marines were deploying right now to Iran, what would you tell them to prepare them, or tell them to prepare for exactly?
Well, let me tell a story. Right, we're getting ready to go into Baghdad, and we had always been told we were never going into Baghdad. Right, we were told this because the mother of all battles, the rings of death, and so we get orders to go into Baghdad. And one of the lieutenants, I was a major at the time. One of the lieutenants asked our battalion commander, and he said, "Sir, we were told we weren't going to go into Baghdad because, we can't, sir, it's not survivable." And the battalion commander looked at him and said, "The sacrifice of one Marine infantry battalion during the global war on terrorism is insignificant." And so we all got together and we said, we're going to go in and we're going to kill everybody we can until we get wiped out. Because we really thought we were going to, we thought our battalion was going up against 10,000, Fedayeen, 10,000 Iraqi soldiers. We roll into Baghdad and everybody was cheering for us. What I would be telling my Marines if we were going in is I would be telling them straight up, this is going to be a tough fight. We are going to have to fight to survive. And you're going to be fighting from every direction potentially. And that's why at least I want to have the seat of my back. I like to have the seat of my back. So at least I got the United States Navy behind me, and I only got to project forward, right? And that's why I'm hoping I'm correct. I think that is sustainable. It doesn't make it any less threat or any less dangerous. But I think we can do that. I think that's a sound mission. And I believe that will be supportable and survivable.
Understand that. So I'm gonna ask you this directly because both of us took this oath, and Congress has not declared war. I'm a strict constitutionalist guy, but like I said, I did 27 years in the Navy, obeyed every order that was given to me. But Congress hadn't had one vote on it. Article 1, Section 8 is really unambiguous. Congress declares war. So, as a man who swore the oath to the Constitution, who led Marines under it, what do you make of our American forces being committed to combat without congressional authorization?
Well, that's a great question. I'm concerned about that. But what I will tell you is this. The if you want to call it the protesting that we're getting from the left right now is playing right into the Iranians' plan. The only way the Iranians can, if you will, survive this is if we stop before we meet our objectives. And so when you see a Democratic Party that's pushing back so much, and they're not pushing back, by the way, because Congress didn't give approval, because in this type incident, it's not required. Like it or not, it's not required, and that's not their fight. Their fight is trying to win the midterms, and they're trying to make this administration look bad, and they're complaining about gas prices. When the Biden administration was going on, the gas was much higher. Nobody complained on that side. So that concerns me because that rhetoric plays right into our enemy's hands. You want to end this war quickly? Get the Democratic Party behind this and let them say, hey, Iran, block the straits. We don't care if the gas goes up $1. It's going to come down when you're all dead. If they did that, they would bring a faster maneuver to it. One of the things that I want to pound the table on, we have been given, and our brothers and sisters that are fighting this campaign have been given every asset we have. It's amazing.
Everyone.
What's that?
I said everyone. All the assets are out there for sure.
Everyone. They gave him a submarine. They're giving them everything. B-2 bombers, B-1 bombers. This is an amazing show that the men and women are being supported 100%. When I rolled into Iraq, there were times, and I'm not complaining about the Marine Corps, right? This is just war. We ran out of food for a day. We ran out of water almost because we were pushing in and we outstripped our supply route. And eventually we got it, but we're Marines. We don't complain. We just fight. But this group of men and women that are doing this campaign have everything they need, I believe. And the president is not holding anything back. And that is if you got to fight a war, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So last question, then I'm gonna let you go, Colonel. We're gonna plug your book here in a second. I'm gonna show it to everybody. But and I ask this as a Navy veteran, 27 years, a father with a son in the Air Force right now, and as someone who just said the names of our fallen brothers and sisters here. So what is your honest assessment of where this goes? Not what the Pentagon's going to say, not the Pentagon briefing, but the real talk. What are the realistic outcomes, and what do you want the American people to understand that they may not be being told because they're not in the briefings, they're not in the back rooms. So what do you want them to?
That's a great question. That's a great question. It's a stressful question for me, right? I think we're going to meet all of our objectives. They will not have a nuclear weapon. They'll never get one. We're going to blow them back in the Stone Age. But in my honest belief, I believe we will lose more brothers and sisters in this fight. And it's going to be gut-wrenching. It takes one lucky thing for the enemy to kill us.
Right.
Sometimes one accident, right? One accident that we make that has nothing to do with the enemy can kill us. Like this KC-130 event. No enemy, most likely, just an accident. But imagine that on a ship, which I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. If a ship has an incident, it could be catastrophic to the men and women.
They had a fire, like they just had a fire on the Ford in the laundry room. That could have been catastrophic.
Could have been catastrophic.
Yeah.
And that's what really strains me, if you will, because I've seen war, I've seen blood, and I've seen our brothers and sisters die, and I don't want to see that happen again.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, Colonel. So, Colonel William Bernard Dunn, 33 years, United States Marine Corps, and this is his book. I want to pop this up on the screen here. Gunfighters Rule, and we can get that at Amazon. So, tell everyone where they can reach you at, Colonel. Your handle or your website where they can reach, and
Okay.
also anywhere else they can get this book.
Well, you can pretty much get the book anywhere you can get books. Easiest one is Amazon. And I got a website, colonelwilliamdunn.com, if you want to look me up there. And then if you get that book, I think you'll enjoy it.
Well, Colonel, thank you, man. We appreciate it on behalf of every veteran watching, every military family, every parent, I guess, with a kid in the military in uniform tonight, and definitely for all of my audience, we thank you for your service, Colonel. Thank you for your honesty here tonight, and you are definitely welcome back on the show. We call it the Lion's Den, so you definitely welcome back in the Lion's Den anytime, Colonel.
Well, thanks, and thank you for your service. If we pull the string, I bet we served somewhere together or close by.
Well, I'm sure we did. If you were in Iraq, I was there too, so I'm sure we were definitely close by because I flew in and out a lot. I'll just say that.
Okay, outstanding.
Okay, well, thank you,
Well,
Colonel.
y'all
We
have a great
appreciate it.
night, and I want, if I give one more thing, is I
Yes,
just
yes,
ask
sir.
everyone to pray for all the men and women that are bringing this fight to the enemy because they're in harm's way, and let's all give them an extra prayer tonight that they all make it home another night and make it home alive.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We definitely do that. All right, Colonel, you have a good week. We thank
Yes,
you.
sir. You too. Have a good week.
All right, bye bye.
Bye.
All right, that was the first guest for tonight, Colonel William Dunn. Whew. Should we take a break? I don't want to take a break, man. We're just moving because our next guest is actually here. So, but Colonel Dunn just gave us the operational reality of it all. And what's happening to our troops because we don't get the real. A lot of times we get the blackout. The mainstream media, they have their thing. What the drone threat actually looks like. What the boots on the ground in Iran would actually mean, the human cost of this war in real terms. So, told by a man who's been there, and that's why I wanted these two gentlemen on tonight because they've been there. And we get a lot of the talking heads and people on social media who has never donned a uniform, never stood a watch, never been in combat, and so they're just talking out of their anuses. I'm gonna try to keep it clean tonight. But now I want to pull back the lens because underneath all of that, underneath every casualty, every unconstitutional deployment, every Gold Star family being made tonight, there is a bigger question: how? How did we get here? And who lied to us maybe to get us here? Is there a pattern? Because we had Iraq, we got Afghanistan, we had Libya, Syria, now Iran, and now Iran. And that was, I guess, those 5 countries in 7 years that was talked about that we would be conquered and taken down. And at what point do we stop calling these mistakes? I guess because 20 years in Afghanistan, 20 years Iraq, Libya, and start calling them what they are. So a machine that runs on lies, profits on blood, and answers on nobody. And it pains me to say that. It pains me to say that because I spent 27 years defending this country and defending the Constitution of the United States. And like I said, my son is there, and Godspeed to him, and definitely praying for him every night. But my next guest has been documenting that machine for decades. He was against the Iraq War when it was career suicide to say so. He served with Armed Forces Radio, so he knows how the media machine works from the inside. His new book called Empire of Lies, I show you that later. Fragments from the Memory Hole, Empire of Lies, Fragments from the Memory Hole. And if that title does not describe this exact moment in history, I don't know what does. New York Best Times selling author, Army Commendation Medal recipient, Charles Gawet, and I hope I said that right. So I'm going to bring in Charles real quick. Here we go. Boom. Accept, and we should be good. Hold on. All right, Charles, you're up. I see you. You can come in now. Unmute in your camera. Charles, can you hear me? Charles Goet. He's there. I can see him. He may have just went to the bathroom or something. Went to go get a drink. Went to go get a drink. Well, tell you what, we'll take a break until he comes in. How about that? We'll just juice it up a little bit. Here we go. All right, there he is.
There we are.
Hey, got your camera on?
There we go. Let's see. We got
no camera yet. No picture. I can hear you fine.
okay. Good. Turn on camera. It says. Turn it. There we go.
There we go. There it is.
Yeah, there we are.
There's that beautiful face.
Well, there's that beautiful face.
Yes,
You
sir.
look
Yes,
comfortable
sir.
in that chair.
Oh, very comfortable. Very comfortable. This is where we get it done here in the Lions Den. So did I say your last name right?
Yeah, it's Goyette. So you pronounce the T, and some people think you don't, but you do.
Okay, Goyette.
Yeah, like Corvette.
There you go. Right, right.
Yeah.
Now I'm not sure how much you heard of with Colonel Dunn. I know you came in a little while, and you probably heard the tail end of it. But
No, I didn't get it. What did you?
okay, well, it doesn't matter then if that's the case. But if you didn't hear any of it, but Colonel Dunn, he spoke about the operational reality of what's going on in Iran right now. So now I'm trying to get you to tell my audience the
Yes.
historical truth. Okay, so you've been warning about this exact playbook for decades: Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, and now
Yep.
Iran. So
Yep.
when you look at what's happening in the Persian Gulf right now, does this feel like deja vu, or does this one feel
Oh,
different to you?
I can't even tell you. I can't even tell you. Are we started now? You want to start now, or?
Yeah, let's rock. We're live. You are
Oh, okay.
live.
Oh, okay.
Sir.
Yeah, it's so familiar to me. I mean, I can see I used to call him Donald Rumsdamera because he was such a bad Secretary of Defense, but I can
Right.
see him saying, "Well, this thing's gonna last, 6 days, maybe 6 weeks, certainly I doubt 6 months," and I hear that stuff, everybody saying, "We'll be out of there in 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever," and it's just, it's the same thing over and over again. It's the same deep state playbook, and we've been subjected to this so many times. I don't know how long the American people are going to buy it, but they gin up they gin up an enemy, and they gin up a reason to go take the enemy out, and then they are really confused about the consequences for the fighting men and for the taxpayers as well. They have really no idea. I saw a pretty credible story the other day, said this whole thing was planned by President Trump, Marco Rubio, Gerald Witkoff, and Kushner. Well, that's not a planning staff. I mean, you saw that they didn't even figure out how to get American diplomats and American nationals out of the area. So it's another disaster in the making, and I'm afraid this is really going to be the big one, Jerome.
Yeah, so you wrote that this is the third attack on Iran in 2 years. And
Yeah.
so walk us through that. I want you to walk us through that timeline and what specifically worries you the most about this escalation, because it's definitely being escalated,
Oh.
even more than the previous ones.
It is being escalated, and we saw Israel attack them in 24, in October of 24, and then we had the June attack last year, and now we have this one. So that's the third attack. President Trump was flustered. He was apoplectic that they didn't take a couple of missiles and say, "Okay, we give up. What do you want?" As they did basically in June. But it wasn't just Iran that was in trouble in June. Israel was in trouble too. So everybody wanted to stand down, and President Trump was glad to stand down. He'd stepped into a mess, and he was glad to see it over with. But this time, it didn't turn out that way. And this time, it is spreading throughout the region. I have seen things, as everybody else has. It's not just me, but I have seen, for example, they were talking last week. Now I know they've conducted some attacks on Karg Island, the oil transport facility in the middle of the Gulf. But I saw the geniuses in the deep state talking about, well, what we want to do, and maybe we'll put special forces on Karg Island. Oh, great! And then maybe we'll get the Kurds. We'll arm up the Kurds to fight in northwest Iran to help topple the regime. And I'm thinking, has anybody passed this by Erdogan in Turkey? Because he's not going to like that very much.
Well, and the Kurds actually denied them.
Yeah,
I think they were smart because they knew Erdogan would be right behind them.
Yeah, and we victimized them so many times in the past. I mean, I remember Bush the elder, encourage them to rise up and take their country back and to have a revolution and so on, and they did. We were broadcasting from Cyprus to them. Come on, now's the time. Step up. Let's have a revolution and stuff after the first Gulf War, and they did. And it was like a turkey shoot. We had denied Saddam air patrol over their areas, and we backed off on that and let them, and it was just a disaster. So, but this is the way things go in wars. Everything, it's like Mike Tyson said, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the nose. Well,
Right.
everybody may have a plan about how you're going to win this because we have might. We have more might than anybody, but it's not always might. Might didn't win Vietnam. We were helicoptering Marines off the roof 5 or 6, 4, 5, I think it was 5 years to the date after the day that we reached our maximum deployment there. We had like 430,000 American forces on the ground. 5 years later, we were helicoptering Marines off the roof. And it wasn't just that. Who had more might than us in Iraq? And yet we divided the country up, and then we redivided it, and then we supported ISIS, and then we supported bin Ladenites, and then we gave half the country. The idea wasn't to empower Iran, but we made sure we gave half the country over to the Shias, which were a majority there. So that emboldened Iran's position there. But that's not even the worst. Jerome, let me share with you the most recent one. We had American men and women serving in all of these Gulf wars in the last 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the threat of ISIS, bin Ladenites, the Taliban, so on and so forth. And yet, last year, we empowered a guy. The United States, basically empowered a guy to take over Syria by the name of Jolani. Jelani, a year and a half ago, Jelani had a $10 million bounty on his head by the U.S. State Department for his acts of terrorism and his crimes. We, the taxpayers, were willing to put up $10 million. We were willing to put up $10 million to get this guy. And guess what happened? They put him in an Armani suit. They gave him a $90,000 Swiss watch. And all of a sudden, he's, Mr. Liberal,
Trimmed his
moderate.
beard, gave him a nice haircut, invited him to the White House.
Isn't it? And invited him to the White House. And President Trump said, well, he's a strong leader. Yeah, he's a strong leader, and the carnage goes on in Syria. And nobody really understood why Assad had to go anyway. So this is just the deep state is the executive arm of the American global military empire, and whatever it wants, it seems to get, and that's where we are now. We're in a mess, and it's going to be very difficult to get out of.
Yeah, and you mentioned, as far as getting hit in the nose and not having a plan, or the Mike Tyson thing. So I asked Colonel Dunn, did he think that we were surprised by the retaliation that Iran has given the United States and Israel overall? Because we've taken a lot of damage that I honestly don't believe that we were ready for, because President Trump, being his braggadocious self, the way he is, was to be over in a couple of days, and pretty much thought, hey, we just blow them up a little bit, they'll quit, lay down their weapons, they're gonna unconditionally surrender. So did we underestimate them?
Well, of course we did, and we do that often. Speaking of his braggadocio self, he invited nobody else to help us. Well, we'll do it all by ourselves. No, we don't need your help. You British, get out of here. You're a bunch of you-know-whats. Don't worry. And then, now that things are getting really ugly, Susie Wiles and the people in the White House and the re-election people, their hair is practically on fire because of fuel prices, and they know what it's going to do to Republicans in the fall. So now they're desperate to do something to get Gulf oil flowing, and it's too late. But they're anxious to do anything. So now I see President Trump, promising, come on in and join us. We'll welcome your help. Next thing he's going to do tomorrow, he'll probably say, we're going to drop all our tariffs against you if you come help us. If you got any free destroyers, send them our way.
Right.
So,
and we have countries saying no. I mean, they're saying no.
Yeah.
I mean, because Britain, at first they were sending the carriers. Then he said, we don't need you because the war is over. We've already won. We've already won. We don't need you. Just keep it. Now it's like he's almost begging for help, and France says no. Italy said no. Spain says no. Britain said they're just in a defensive posture. So who's left?
Yeah.
Yeah, really, who's left to come help? Because none of the Middle Eastern countries can come help. They're almost willing to like, hey, okay, we give up. We're gonna, expel the Americans off our base. Just don't blow us up no more. Just
Yeah.
don't send in no more hypersonics, man.
Yeah.
That's the way I honestly think about it. Just looking at the way things has transpired on the timeline. Like you're saying, the things that he said, to these other countries, right?
I think you're right. And um, the worse it gets, the more they want to stay away from it. And of course, all the other the oil producing emirates in the region all thought the Americans were their protectors, and that's why they let us stage forces there. Well, the Americans protect us. That started really big time in the Iraq War. Actually, in the first Gulf War, we started putting troops in Saudi Arabia. That's what fired up Bin Laden, by the way, is the presence of the American forces in
Right.
what he
In
called the
Saudi.
land of the two holy mosques or whatever it was. And
Right.
but they all think, well, it's okay, because we have American as protectors. Well, it hasn't been very helpful to them in this incident, has it? So we're in deeper. The events are starting to spread. The European nations are reconfiguring their relationships. They're assessing what's possible out there. Russia's ringing up the cash register with higher oil prices. And this is the other thing about these interludes. You think, well, all the supply chains are going to change. Oil users are going to find new sources. Shippers are going to find new guarantors, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the war, they've created new relationships, and they don't necessarily have to go back to the old ones. And we've seen that with some of the Trump tariffs. All the soybean farmers, they thought the Trump tariffs put them out of business. China eats a lot of pork. They need a lot of soybeans for feed, but it put them out of business. And so when Trump was ready to drop the tariffs, Brazil and South American countries had already started clearing land, and they were already growing soybeans, and they were already able to undercut us. So they were creating shipping spaces to
Right.
ship them. And so we lost all that market share, and they still haven't gotten it back. And then what happens when you undermine your own farmers or any significant group in the United States? The government says, "Oh, well, we're going to make it up to you." So we lost the revenue. They lost the revenue. The business got transferred on a global basis to other countries, and in the meantime, then we have to raid the treasury more to pay them for the losses that they suffered when we put the tariff in place. All these things have repercussions, and it's the same with oil now. People are looking for other customers, other sources. And just to make one other point, we're told that we have to use American service people, that we have to use American might, we have to use American dollars, and those are considerable, to make sailing safe in the Persian Gulf. But hold the phone a minute. I thought we were told we were energy self-sufficient. So you mean
Right.
we go in there, our people are vulnerable, our people can get shot at, our people can get bombed and die, and we can pay for it to clear the Gulf for oil that's going to be transported to where? To China, to India. And we're the suckers that have to pay to make the shipping lanes safe while we are energy self-sufficient, right?
I could never understand how we are supposedly the number one exporter of oil, but we're dependent
Yeah.
on oil from these other countries. That absolutely makes zero sense. I understand we have to export it to make money to sell. I get that, but you should be able to use that for your own country and not rely
Yeah.
on other countries. Because I don't think Iran or Kuwait or I don't think none of these countries rely on Saudi Arabia, rely on any other country for oil,
Of
for their
course not.
gasoline.
Of
You
course not.
so how is it that we have to do that? Because I honestly don't think that our government tells us the truth. But your book is called Empire of Lies: Fragments from the
The
Memory
memory
Hole.
hole.
The
Yeah.
Memory Hole. So in the audience heard Colonel Dunn describe the operational picture, the drones, the bases struck, the unfortunately KIA. So now break down for my audience what the Empire of Lies
Yes.
actually is and
Yes.
how it operates, because it was definitely a machine. The machine that got us here didn't start on February 28th.
No, it sure didn't. The Empire of Lies is what I call the global American military empire. And fragments from the memory hole. If in I suppose in high school, most people would have read 1984 by George Orwell as this dystopian, really dark future when everything's, when they want to torture you, they
Right.
take you to the Ministry of Love. And when they want to rewrite history, make things, rewrite, cover up their mistakes, they do it in the ministry of truth. So the memory hole in the empire of lies is where they go to rewrite truth and to conceal all the lies that they've told us in the past. And I can give you some. I've got a couple of favorites. One of my favorites was, this one's really good. This wasn't what I was thinking of, but this one's really good. So in the Iraq War, they were making the case. This wasn't military strategists and nuclear weapons experts and scientists, but they got together in the White House and they thought, how are we going to sell this war to the people? Because the people weren't really that crazy about it. So they said, we've got to come up with something. So it wasn't science, and it wasn't military, and it wasn't atomic weapons experts. It was spinmeisters, advertisers, pollsters, and they came up with this little slogan that you remember, everybody remembers. We can't wait for the final evidence, the smoking gun, to be in the form of a mushroom cloud. And that's the line they trotted out, and they used it daily, and Bush used it, Cheney used it, Condoleezza Rice used it, and everybody used it over and over. You can't wait for the mushroom cloud, and that got the people eventually on board.
Right.
But here was an interesting story about it. They discovered these aluminum tubes in Iraq. All right. And the neocon warmonger said, okay, these aluminum tubes are used for the industrial processing of uranium. It's used for uranium enrichment, aluminum tubes. Now, our own guys in the Department of Energy that actually do that kind of stuff, that's their business. They looked at them and said, you must be kidding. These aren't suitable for that. You can't do that with these. That's not what these are for. And it turned out, of course, they weren't. But the vice president and Scooter Libby in his office, this is the deep state at work, and this is how they work. They're very clever. They packaged this story up about the aluminum tubes. Oh, these aluminum tubes, smoking gun, mushroom cloud. It was the final piece of evidence, they said. It nails down the evidence. So they leaked this story to the New York Times. They leaked it to Judith Miller at the New York Times, who had been lying Americans in the war. She'd been fronting for a con man embezzler named Ahmed Chalabi that the neocons wanted, the president of Iraq after we took over. So they leaked the story to the New York Times. It ended up on the front page of the New York Times on a Sunday morning. Aluminum tubes, uranium processing. That's it. Here's the proof. Nuclear weapons, uranium enrichment. So that same Sunday morning, Vice President Cheney shows up on Meet the Press. And he says, here's the aluminum tubes. He said, final evidence, smoking gun, nailed the evidence down. He said, Jerome, he said, but don't take it from me. Here it is in the New York Times this morning.
Right.
So it was a great play. It's from the deep state to the, the lapdog press, from the lapdog press, back to the other lapdog press, back to the deep state, and then to the American people. And it was all nonsense. And in the first Gulf War, they had another one that was just as juicy. They said, and this time, this was the first Gulf War in, 90? I think it was 90.
98, 90, well, 99, 90, 1993, yeah, the first one.
And the American people didn't want it. And President Bush the elder, he wasn't really crazy about it. And then, he'd been taking this thing about the wimp presidency, and people are calling him a wimp and stuff. And Margaret Thatcher from England said, don't go wobbly on us now, George. We've got to go in there. And he's kind of got, okay, we're going to go in. We're going to go to war and stuff. So the American people weren't polling for it. They didn't like it. And I'll tell you why. Here's a very good reason. While Americans were sent over there to liberate Kuwait, Saddam was our guy. The CIA put the Ba'ath Party in. He was our guy. In fact,
against Iran, right.
Right. When he wanted to invade Iraq, he checked with our ambassador first before he did it. She said, we're hands off. We don't have any interest in what goes on between Arab nations like that. So he took that as like, that's the wink and the nod. So he went on in.
Yeah.
So the American people didn't have any interest in going there. And one of the reasons why is because while Americans, what suckers we must be. While Americans were being sent in there to liberate that country, take the country back, the royal family of Kuwait, the Emir's family, they were jetting off to Switzerland to go disco dancing. But the Americans were putting their butts on the line to liberate their country. So still the American people weren't buying it. And so again, the spin masters go to work in the White House. How do we sell this war to the American people? And here's what they came up with. They came up with the Saddam Hussein's ready to roll into Saudi Arabia. And if he rolls into Saudi Arabia, that's the end of Western civilization. He'll take over all that oil. We'll all freeze to death in the dark. We won't have fertilizer for food. It's going to be the end of civilization. We've got to go in there now. And the people said, well, we don't want the end of civilization. We want to be able to buy gas. I got to go to work tomorrow. So the American people kind of begrudgingly, and then after a while, they kind of got on board for. So how do you make the case that Saddam Hussein is on the border of Saudi Arabia? Well, the vice president's office said the Iraqi forces are now on the border of Saudi Arabia, and they have, and I don't remember the numbers, forgive me, but it's like they have like 15,000 tanks on the border now. They have 150,000 men. They're ready to roll in. So there was one reporter at a little old newspaper in St. Petersburg. And she got her boss, is a lot of money for a little old newspaper. She got her boss to give her $3,200. And she used that money and she rented surveillance satellite time. And she had the satellites give them all what's going on in Saudi Arabia, what's going on the border, what's going on. And they got great photos. And she hired, satellite surveillance experts to analyze the photos. And guess what? No 15,000 men on the border, no tanks ready to roll in, no roads that had been used, no logistical support. It was all a farce. And she kept calling and calling the Pentagon, and she kept calling and calling. And, what's the story? And they wouldn't answer her. They just said, well, trust us. But you can't trust them. That's because they're the empire of lies. Nothing that comes out of them has been true in the course of wars. They make wars for many reasons. I'll tell you one reason they make wars. In Syria, when we toppled the government in Syria, we had jihadists in Syria who were being armed by the CIA, fighting with Islamic fundamentalists in Syria who are armed by the Pentagon.
Right.
So if you're a weapons manufacturer and you sell weapons, I suppose that's a good deal. You're arming both sides. But if you're the American people, it's deadly, and not to mention a massive waste of money.
We're, with the American people, and this is where I have a lot of, let's say, discussions, and people call me crazy and stuff like that. And I'm like, how do you know who the bad guy is? How do you know? Have you been around? Have you been to Iraq? Have you, you only know because you're being told who the bad guy is. Oh, did you know that Osama bin Laden used to be a CIA guy? He was a CIA guy. Did you know that we armed Osama bin Laden and the Mujahideen against the Russians in Afghanistan when Russia couldn't be? Do you know he was our guy? Do you know, I say Saddam was our guy, and the new guy in Syria? Do you know? Do you understand this? And Americans, unfortunately, we just keep falling for it. And I think it's because, you've been inside the media and you've just described basically the media machine. So, and how the military media and the mainstream media and the press now, we used to have I guess, sort of honest press, where they work together and they shape the public opinion when a war breaks out or when they want a war to break out. So what, I don't watch CNN, I don't watch Fox, I don't watch MSNBC, I don't watch none of that crap. But some of my audience and some of the people that argue with me still do. So what should my audience be filtering right now in everything that they're watching on any of these stations,
Thank you, Jerome. Thank you. You just lobbed one right over the plate for me. Thank you so much, because it's something I really want to talk to people about. They need to know this stuff. They really, there's a syndrome in people that's very disturbing. And if you look in the psychiatric manuals, it's not listed in there, but it sure as heck should be. And I call it combat envy. And it's these guys, look, we've all run into a guy in a bar somewhere, and he was a Green Beret in Vietnam, or he was a SEAL and the stuff. And, he's just trying to make himself, and that's okay. It doesn't do anybody any harm. But these guys in the national debate, these guys in the media and stuff that make this stuff up, they're very dangerous because they corrupt the debate and they lie to the American people who turn to them for the truth. I'll give you this one. In fact, I'll give you a couple. There was a guy on Fox News for a long time, Wayne somebody, Cotter, I think. Well, it was Wayne somebody. And he was a former CIA national security, some kind of armaments expert. And they had him on all the time. all the time. He was on all the time for like 15 years. And he'd go on there and he'd say the most insane things like, well, we need to have a ground invasion of Iran now. A ground invasion of Iran? Get off your horse. But they kept him on there because they liked what he's saying because, fear and war sells. It's good for rating. Fox News Alert, it spikes the ratings and so on. So they kept him on there. Finally, one of the real CIA guys kind of got embarrassed by all this and they blew the whistle on him. And he wasn't a CIA national security veteran weapons guy. He was a hot tub manager. He managed a hot tub. And he was a felon, and on top of it, of
Wow.
course. But anyway, that's just one. You got even more credible people than that. Presumably, Brian Williams was the primary news anchor
Right.
on NBC News.
Correct.
And Brian Williams started making up stories about when he flew into Iraq in the first war. Combat envy. That's what this is. He's making up stories. There's a hole in his psyche, some way he doesn't feel worthy. He doesn't feel credible enough. So he made up this story. Yeah, he did fly in as a reporter on something. There's no danger to him. But he started embellishing it. And each time it got a little scary. Oh, it's an RPG coming right at us. Our tubes headed right down to us, and we had corkscrew landing down. It was very dangerous. Oh my God, my hair was on fire.
I remember that.
Yeah. And then, some of the guys that were actually on the mission, by the way, you like this, the mission was called Big Windy, which kind of applied to Brian Williams. It was a perfect name for him. But the guys that were on the mission finally blew the whistle on Stars and Stripes. They said, that's not what happened. That's what it was. When they called him out, Brian Williams said, I must have had a brain tumor. I mean, it was just pathetic. So, but here's the point to me as far as the media goes. That's all they have to do is sell their credibility to the American people. We turn to them because they're supposed to be trustworthy. But with all of this lying, they're supposed to tell you the things that they know least about, far away around the world on third-hand reports, but they can't tell you the truth about things they know the best. But his management didn't fire him because they were war makers. They were manufacturers of war materials, General Electric, big defense contractor. So they suspended him for a couple of weeks and they moved him over to anchor the news on MSNBC. So these guys, they have no shame. They don't have enough respect for us, really, is what I think. Jerome, I think they don't have enough respect for us to bother to protect their own franchise to tell us the truth. And I can give you more. I can give you one about it goes on forever. I can give you a lot of them. I could give you stories about Hillary Clinton, Richard Blumenthal's the Connecticut senator. But here's one I really like. Bill O'Reilly, the main guy on Fox News forever. And he started making up stories about, well, when I lead my men in battle, well, what do you mean when you lead your men in battle? You were never in a war. And then he started, well, I was in the Falklands in a war. When I was in the war in the Falklands, he kept talking about being in the war in the Falklands and deadly situation, having to drag his cameraman to safety and stuff like this. And of course, he wasn't in the war. He wasn't in the Falklands ever. Not even a minute, not ever. He wasn't in the Falklands ever. And he's making these stories up, and it got worse. It was like, I think he said he said, I saw nuns getting shot in the head. I guess he was talking to Central America terrorism back in the day. Mm-hmm. And I saw nuns. Well, he didn't. And it came out that he saw photos that this had happened. Well, you saw and I saw the Zapruder film about Kennedy. Does that make us an eyewitness to Kennedy's assassination? Right. I mean, it's just absolutely.
I was there.
And when they called him out, when he was found out, did the network do anything about it? No, because they don't respect us. They can tell us anything they want, and they think that we will buy it, and we shouldn't buy it anymore.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I say that, and after serving, like I say, 27 years, and seeing, going back and understanding, the wars and how we've gotten into them and the lies, and watching, General Powell, Colonel Powell, talk about the yellow cake and the vial and holding up the little vial of yellow cake. And I'm like, come on, man, stop, cut it out. And so here's the big one. Then I'm going to move on to another question. But here's the one that always gets me. It's two of them. And they use, well, we need to fight them over there so we don't have to fight them here. and I'm doing it so my son and daughters, or so your son and daughters won't have to do it. Well, you know what? Damn it, guess what? There's some sons and daughters just died in
Yeah.
this war.
Yeah.
From, if we're talking, Iraq war. Okay, so we're in Iraq to so your sons and daughters and our sons and daughters won't have to do it. Okay, yeah. And now we're hearing our sons and daughters are doing it. So obviously that's a lie. And obviously, that they use that just like anything else to get under the skin. But I want to ask you about Congress real quick.
Well, let me say one thing, Jerome, before we jump
Go
over,
ahead.
because I want to jump on what you were talking about.
Okay.
Um, there, we got to fight them over there, so we don't fight them over here. Well, there's a CIA term called blowback. And blowback is the consequences, the repercussions that we get for things that we've done in foreign countries. When they get tired of it, or they've had enough, or their anger rises, or they get they get warlike about it because they don't like what we've been doing to them. Then they strike us back in some way. But the other part of the definition of blowback is not just that they strike back for our actions overseas. The other part of the term blowback means that the American people have no idea why this is happening. So on 9/11, we just thought, well, they hate us for our freedom, and they hate us because, we're like degraded, and they hate us because they saw Britney Spears dancing on MTV, and they hate us because they hate, but that wasn't the case. It was blowback, and the American people didn't know that Osama bin Laden put out a fatwa against the United States because the sanctions in Iraq were supposed to have been resulted in the death of some 400,000 Iraqi children, couldn't get food, couldn't get medicine, couldn't get clean water. And Madeleine Albright, the Secretary of State, said, well, we think it's worth it. We think
Right. This
400,000 deaths is worth starving the people in a country that we've conquered. So and I thought of that the other day because, we already had an event that struck in, it was in Austin, Texas the other day. And I thought,
Right.
oh boy, this may be just the first, and now people are being put on alert all over the place. The Academy Awards, oh, we're going to have to really guard people and walk them through the checks twice and stuff,
Right.
and so,
Yeah.
so don't tell me it's and the other one they tell along those same lines is, this will be the war to end all wars. They've been telling us that since World War
Does
One, but
that
they've
always.
just they brought that out again.
Mhm.
What's his name? Netanyahu said, "Well, if we go into Iraq, I can assure you this will have the greatest long-term consequences of peace and prosperity for the Middle East." Nonsense. But they're saying the same thing now about Iran.
Right. Yeah, they've been a week away from developing a nuclear weapon for 47 years now,
Yeah.
or whatever. And it's one thing to, you know, um, about blowback. Like you're saying, people go, Iran has been. I talk about Iran has been killing Americans for 47 years, and then they go to 1979. Is when no, you really have to go back to 1953
That is for sure.
and learn what we did
Yeah.
in 1953 that actually culminated 1979. I mean, and so they miss out. They leave out these parts of history. Where we actually did this shit, but we gonna just we're not gonna say what we did. I mean, it's just preposterous. And I used to be that person. I used to be that
Yeah,
guy.
we all did.
Before I started. Well, it was a long time ago, thinking for myself and and doing things for myself. But all right, but Congress, Article 1, Section 8. Congress declares war, not the president,
Yeah.
not the Pentagon, Congress. And they've actually absolutely did anything. So, of course, Congress didn't do anything here too. So, when did Congress just stop doing its job on war powers? And if you know, can you walk us through the War Powers
Yeah.
Resolution of 1973 and whether it truly has any teeth left in it?
Well, I'm not gonna be able to walk you through the War Powers Resolution because, it's honored in the breach, but I wanna jump on because you've given me the opportunity, I wanna jump on Article 1, Section 8.
Yeah, go for
And
it.
yeah, and because it's important that people know that we didn't when the country was created and they were gonna have divided government with checks and balances, they didn't just say, "Well, let's see, we're gonna divide in powers, so we give this to you and one for you and one for you and one for you." They said, "Okay, what makes the most sense?" Well, one thing that made sense to them was knowing history better than the recent guys. They said, well, one thing is the executive branch. That would be a president, a duke, a king, prime minister. The executive branch always has a propensity to start or engage in needless wars and then the people die and they get broke, they get impoverished fighting them. And so we want to make sure that we take the power to make war away from the executive branch, that means the president in our case, and give it to the representatives of the people who have to pay and suffer in these wars. And so it was very clear. There's nothing foggy or fuzzy about it. It's just that Congress has the power to declare war. And there's another reason that it makes sense, and it's something that we're very much lacking today. When you have a declaration of war, you declare who the enemy is. You pledge what kind of resources that you're willing to use to defeat them. That what victory can.
Yeah, I think your camera is stuck. Uh-oh, he'll be back. I knew that was gonna happen. Yeah, he might need to log back in or check the camera, but he's still in. But yeah, what he was talking about was Congress and how the founders gave war powers to Congress because they knew, right? The founding fathers knew executive branches and they have an appetite for war. Okay,
Yep.
I think Charles is back. Here we go. Yeah, your camera is a little blocked at the bottom or something. What's going on?
Oh, okay. Let's get that out of there. Can you see me now? No, that's kind of funny. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, I can see like half, like your head.
I'll tilt it down some or something.
Yeah, a little more. If you tilt it down a little more, maybe.
Okay, let's do this.
Because it was perfect before. So
okay.
You're like me, you have two cameras and
Yeah, I have two cameras.
Yeah, yes, and one of them is showing, and the it should be the top one probably.
Yep. Okay. Do you have me on any kind of camera at all?
No, you're actually locked on one. You're just stuck. And this is what happens when you do a live show, unedited, unfiltered, uncensored, unscripted. But we love it. This is how we roll.
That's kind of the fun of it, really.
Yeah, this is how we do it, man. Because I think people enjoy live shows more than recorded, edited. Things are taken out. Not here in the Lion's Den. You get what you get. In the Lion's Den. It was one night I had hiccups the whole show, man. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous, but we have time. We still have a lot of time left. If you can stick around,
yeah, sure.
It's totally up to you. Okay,
sure.
So yes, so that camera that's on my screen is stuck.
Okay, we'll do our best to unstick it.
Yeah, yes, we'll get to it. It's no problem.
Let's try this camera. This should work, huh?
Not yet.
Not yet, huh?
I tell you what.
Here we go. Here we go.
Well, I'm gonna go in the chat for a minute. Let me get caught up on the chat. Hello to Susan. I see you. You know what? I'm gonna ask you. I forgot to ask the Colonel Susan's question. Susan had a question, and so I'm gonna ask you before we go on to anywhere else, and while you're working on your camera. But Susan says, okay, let's say Trump pulls out everyone tomorrow. Can he save face at all?
Yeah, my answer, Jerome, is no, he can't, and deservedly so. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to the people that like him, but he made a terrible mistake. In the Iraq War, and one of the presidential debates, Ron Paul was the only one out there that said, we shouldn't have been in this war, and it was in I think 2006, so we'd been in it for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, we just marched in, we can just march out. And they booed him for it. But ever since then, from that point on, we lost at least another 1,000 Americans. we lost $1 trillion, I think it was $1.5 trillion of our money, and something like I think it was 40,000 Iraqi deaths from that point forward. 1996, 3 years into the war, when he said we just marched in, we could just march out, and had we just marched out, things would have been. It would have saved a lot of money and an awful lot of lives on both sides, and we ended up exactly where we ended up anyway. So, my answer is he can't save face, but somebody has to be responsible for making the decision. And if it was Gerald Kirshner and Marco Rubio and Steve Witkoff and President Trump that made the decision, then that's kind of what has to happen, in my view.
No, I agree 100%. And like I've told people, and people know, I was a huge Trump supporter. Voted for him 3 times, and campaigned for him, rallied, knocked doors, made phone calls, did whatever it is do. But at some point, when you're able to critically think, and when you're able to think for yourself, you see you just can't follow everything that a man does, because at some point the man is going to be wrong. And I
Right.
totally believe at this point Donald Trump is seriously wrong. And I think he may have been, and your camera's still not up yet, by the way. And and I'm thinking that he say he did it, or he urged Israel and Bibi Netanyahu to do it. I honestly think that was the other way around. And Colonel Dunn touched on it a little bit, and I've heard the rumors that Israel told Trump that, well, if he didn't get involved, if he didn't do it, then they were going to drop nukes. Well, I'm this guy. If I'm the president of the United States, and Israel, a country that we fund tremendously at a tune of $3.5 billion a year or something like that, we give them weapons. We protect them basically with the golden, the dome and
Hmm.
and everything. We give them the rockets to be able to propel a rocket attack, missile attack. And if he says that to me, I'm like, okay, well, you're by yourself, bro.
Yeah, I think so.
If you want to do that, if you want to be annihilated, then you go ahead and nuke Iran, and then you'll probably get nuked out by everybody else, because you're really not liked by a lot of countries and a lot of people, to be honest. I don't think.
Yeah.
And I mean, and at that point, you have to call that bluff, man. Just, okay, well, we don't want you to use nuclear. Well, you know what? No, okay, you're on your own. If you want to do that, you go right ahead, and then you face the consequences of that. I would not walk into a war with the American people because of a threat of another country. So, do you want me to kick you out and you come back in and try it
Sure.
again?
Let's try that.
Okay, so I'm gonna kick you out. You try to come back in. Okay.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna boot him. I booted him. He's gonna come back in, and thank you. I see you, Joe. Joe Olson's in the house, and over in Get. I see you, Pure Blood, and Jamie's in the house. Jamie says that Osama bin Laden was on payroll in DTS. DTS is the system that pays that pays military people and federal workers. DTS. So say Osama bin Laden was in there. Hey, thank you to all the new people. Alex Walton, I see you. Thank you for joining in over there, and good evening. I see you. Like I say, Sarah Recruitment, thank you for coming in. You've been in for a while. And K9 Girl, I see you. And of course, Pure Blood. And Aegis 23, welcome. And I see you, Susan. So, all right, let's see if we can pop Charles back in. Okay, see if you can turn your camera in, then unmute yourself because you're back. Unmute yourself one more time. All right, there we are. You're back.
Good. Good.
All right, so we just had
What
to
would
reset.
radio,
Man.
TV, and streaming be like without a glitch here and there?
Hey, that's right, man. They're just trying to shut us down, man.
I know
That's
it's the
I
man.
think. I think they're just trying to shut us down. So, all right. So you were talking about the powers that the founders gave Congress. So, and you wrote that exact. So, is this fixable, or have we permanently lost that constitutional guardrail now?
I think we've permanently lost it, and it's a shame. But Congress, they're so cowardly. They want deniability. If it goes badly, they don't want to be held accountable. If the war goes badly, they don't want to. Well, I didn't vote for it. The president insisted that he blah blah blah. But that's the way it's supposed to be. You mean they spend all of their lives wanting to be in office? They spend all of their time seeking the approval of people and currying favor with people so they can get elected and raising money, and they get in office. They have a power of making decisions on behalf of their constituents, and they get there, and what are they? They are terrified to do anything because somebody may not like them. So they're always willing to shove authority back to the executive branch so that they don't have to be accountable. It's
Right.
the quality of the people, both sides, ours and D's, is
Mhm.
just it's cowardly in my view if they're not willing to stand up and say this is our authority. If you don't want the Constitution, well, okay, say so. Let's have a Constitutional Convention if you don't. But as long as it's the rule book in the NBA. If the guy lets the shot loose after the buzzer goes off, does it count? No, it doesn't count.
Okay.
You have to have rules, and the rules that the United States, they're not perfect, but everybody, at least when you go onto the court, what the rules are, so that how you have to play. You don't want to foul out in the end of the game if they're counting on you. All the rules of the game. This is all the rules of the country. It's our country. They work for us. They're supposed to follow the rules. And if we don't hold them accountable to follow the rules, then we can't be a self-governing people. Trump says. What restrains your use of presidential authority and power? He says only my own moral judgment. Well, from the earliest of America, we were always taught the difference is we're going to be a country not of kings, but we're going to be a country of laws,
Right.
not men. And the laws may be better, good, worse, better, good, perfect. Whatever they are, they can always be fixed, but it's a government of laws and not men. So no matter if you elect a crazy guy or a fool or just an average guy that's not paying attention, at least you know that the laws are there to protect you from his folly. But we don't do that anymore. And he said, How will we know when the war is over?" Well, he said, "When I feel like it."
When I feel like it. Yeah, right. I'm like, what? When he said that, I'm like, okay, 25th Amendment time. I mean,
It's
really,
really, yeah, it's really serious, Jerome. It's so
that is, so I mean, because it's when I've seen this that the leaders and a lot of people and they rely on ignorant people. It just is what it is, right? But our leaders, they don't understand this region. So what do you think is going to come back and haunt us and bite us because they don't understand this reason, this region with what's going on in Iran, right?
Yeah. I see two things that kind of working in parallel at the same time in America. And I want your listeners to forgive me because it's not very pretty, but I'm going to tell you what I see, and you can accept or reject what I'm telling you. The monetary system in the United States is a giant fraud. It's legalized counterfeiting. The Fed prints money, and they print money for elected officials, for example, to buy wars. They print money to, pay for sex change operations for people in El Salvador. Whatever they print the money for, they print the money, and every dollar they print reduces the value of the dollars that you hold in your pocket. So that's what inflation is. Inflation is it's not that prices are going up. Yeah, you see prices are going up. But the truth is, it's the value of the money, the purchasing power of the money is going down because between, I would say 2008 and 2022, they printed $8 trillion. They printed it up. So the value of the money, that's why we had double digit inflation in some places, the worst inflation since the 1970s, just a couple of years ago in the Biden years, because they were printing money like crazy. Well, the rest of the world is onto this game. And so
Mhm.
they know when they loan money to the United States, when America spends more money, they do every year. They spend more money than they have to. They have to go out there and borrow it. They have to find somebody to loan it to them. So they go to foreign countries. We depend on the kindness of foreign strangers, and they go to foreign countries and they say, if you loan us money, we'll give you this treasury bond. It's all nicely etched, scroll work and stuff. Well, they don't even do that. It's digital now, but you'll buy a treasury bond, and we'll pay you, or at some other treasury instrument, and we'll pay you this much interest every year. And then after 10 years or 20 years or 5 years, whatever it is, you redeem this, we'll give you all your money back. And in the meantime, you'll also have won 3.5% or 4% interest, whatever the interest rate. So people loan money to the United States government to cover its shortfall. It spends at this level, but it takes in money at this level. It's got to cover. So it goes out and borrows money. But the world is getting tired of that. China used to be a major creditor of the United States. Only a few years ago, China had lent the United States. In other words, this is how they had over $1.3 trillion of U.S. Treasury bonds. That means they had loaned that money to Washington, to Uncle Sam, $1.3 trillion, and they wanted to get interest on. But they're not doing it anymore. They're down in half. They have cut that in half. So we have to go out and borrow money from people around the rest of the world. And the reason why is because they know if we can't borrow it, we'll just print it. And the value of these bonds that they're holding, the value of the dollars that they hold, will collapse just like ours will in the neighborhood and at the grocery store. So they're wise to the trick. And they don't mind fleecing their own people by printing their own money. They just don't want to get fleeced by ours anymore. So they're backing away from the dollar. Countries are beating feet to invest themselves in gold. So this is how what I call the global monetary system is on the verge of breakdown. But it is the same thing with our wars. It is the United States, make promises. We're going to free the world and we're going to protect you if you'll let us put our bases on your country. And we will, we'll make the world better when we invade Iraq or invade Iran. And yet the world sees this is the dying stage of an old empire. These are what empires do when they lash out. It's just like the monetary system. So now the whole world, just like they've awakened to the dollar fraud, they're waking up to the global military empire. The Empire of Lies is the name of the book. It tells you this whole story and where we're going. So they've awakened to the Empire of Lies story, and we're in breakdown. And here's something, Jerome, and it's not original thought with me. Others have noticed this long before I was even an adult. There's a syndrome that goes on with empires when they get too big for their britches. In other words, they look at a challenge to their hegemony. They look at somebody rising up that threatens their dominance, economic dominance, military dominance, global military hegemony, whatever the dominance is. They look at these threats and they interpret it. It's our prosperity that made us dominant. I mean, our war machine, all of it comes from our wealth because we had so much wealth. We generated so much wealth. The American living standard was so high, and we earned so much money, and we produced so many things. We manufactured so much. That's the reason we were a mighty military force. So the leaders of today, it's called imperial overstretch. An empire, when it starts to see threats and it begins to crumble or die or sees its position weakening, it doesn't realize that the problem is it's not as economically mighty as it was. It thinks, oh, this is a challenge to our military superiority. So they borrow more money, they spend more money to go, fight another war, push themselves out, establish more bases around the world to try to protect their military dominance. And in doing that, they deplete money, they starve money from the productive economy of the country that made it prosperous to begin with. So it accelerates the collapse of the empire and accelerates the collapse of the money. And we're going through both of those at the same time. And I spell it all out for you in the Empire of Lies. It's not the first. This has happened so many times in history. And here we go again.
And yeah, I agree, and people don't really understand how the money works, and you definitely explain that in a good way, I guess, to the audience. I'm sure they understand that. I mean, because our money, I mean, we're 38 trillion, probably more than that now, in debt. We can never recover from that. We are insolvent as a country. So the only way that we can survive is to continue to print money and fight wars. However, the BRICS, I'm gonna throw this one out there to you. The BRICS countries, they are, and I'm sure, I know my audience understand who the BRICS are, but they're actually starting to use other currencies than the petrodollar because the Iraq stopped using the petrodollar. We went to war. Libya stopped using the dollar. I mean, Gaddafi was going to start his own gold dinar and stop using the dollar. Iran opened up an oil bourse. People probably don't understand. It's around 2008, 2009 now, maybe a couple of years later. So they started selling oil, and now I think Brazil and China are doing deals in yuan, and now Iran says that nobody can go through the Straits of Hormuz unless you use the yuan. So if that happens and takes place, we pretty much collapse overnight. This is the next fear that they're going to use. Well, we're going to collapse overnight, and if we start using yuan, but that's actually more accurate than Iran having a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, it's a very serious threat, and you're absolutely right. Your description of it is perfect. You have these Gulf states like Kuwait and I don't know who else is the United Arab Emirates. All the countries that are getting their petroleum markets crushed, their shipping facilities crushed by Iran, their refineries and so on. So they look at their own population, and the population source of income is just dried up. So they have a lot of money saved, and they've saved a lot of that money in the United States and US banks and US treasuries and so on and so forth. And they look at, the people getting really unhappy because they're out of work, they're out of jobs, they're hungry and so on. And they can have that and leave their money in the United States, or they can bring their money home and provide for their own country. So that's another thing that's been triggered by this war, is the impoverishment also of these Gulf states. And I'm not saying they're impoverished, like when somebody's really impoverished, they're impoverished. They have assets, but when they pull those assets, it hurts us really, really badly. It hurts our banking system, hurts our government. The government has to, you know what happens when nobody wants to loan money to the U.S. government because they have better uses for it. The government, it's not like me. If I want to go buy a Ferrari, I go to the dealership and the guy says, Charles, here's your income and here's the money you have. You can't really buy this Ferrari. Nobody's going to loan you that kind of money at that kind of rate that you can afford that. And I have to calculate. I think, yeah, it's true. I can't really own. Oh, too bad. Well, I can't get the Ferrari, so I'll go get a Mazda. So, but the United States government doesn't have to do that. Whatever, it's existential for them. That means they have to do it or they die. So if they have to print the money and ruin the economy and make prices explode doing it, then they don't have any choice. They have to do it. It's otherwise, or they give up, they die, they go away. It's game over. It's inflate or die. And that's the situation that we find ourselves in. It's not just the 38 or $39 trillion in visible debt. You got another at least $200 trillion more that is owed to people. You're a veteran. They owe
Right.
you money. They owe you probably retirement. People that are on Medicare, Medicaid, they owe them. People are Social Security recipients. They count on that money. If they don't get that money, they can't make their house payment. They can't pay for their
Right.
groceries. Everything starts to crumble. It's like a cataclysm of things that just start toppling like dominoes. So they have to pay those people, and yet they don't have the real money to do it. So they have to print the money. And here's the best example I could give of what this should make it clear to everybody how this money printing game works. If you woke up in the middle of the night, everybody woke up in the morning, and if you ever and all your money was doubled, and if you had $10,000 in the bank, you wake up, you have 20. If you had 50,000 with Fidelity and you wake up, you have 100. If you had 20 bucks in your wallet, you wake up, you have 40. Your kid has $19 in his piggy bank, he wakes up, he has 38. Everything doubles. They double the money supply overnight. But the goods and services, the things that are the real wealth, are the things that are made. How many houses are built? Same amount tomorrow, basically, as yesterday. How many cups of coffee are poured at the restaurant? How many farmers can harvest how much food? How much gasoline people burn getting to and from work? All these things. The real wealth of the country is the things that we make: refrigerators and clothes and entertainment and movies and so on. That's the wealth of the country, is the productivity of the people. So if they double the money supply, boom, but the productivity stays the same, what happens in a very short order? All of this stuff costs twice as much.
Right.
It just moves up to get in line with the newly created money. So every new dollar they print deprives you of the purchasing power of your money down here. All the prices rise, and prices rise to match the amount of money that they created. And yet they will do this at the expense of you and your savings. People's savings in dollars are going to be in jeopardy. And yet they do it because they don't feel they have any other choice if they want to hold on to power. Well, I don't really care if they hold on to power, because they're the ones that have done this to us.
Right. Absolutely. And it's one thing that with this crisis, and especially with the Straits of Hormuz being closed, and probably the Red Sea being challenged with the Houthis as well. A lot of people aren't looking at this, and it probably won't hit until September, October. But the famine, the coming maybe famine problem or issue with the goods, with the farm goods, because this is planting season. for farmers right now across the world, and especially here in the United States. And we can't get the fertilizer because the straits are closed.
It's
And
petroleum based.
you're right.
Yeah. And so much of it is produced in the Mideast areas that are under attack. Yeah, and it's not only that. You're right. That's so important, and people need to understand that if it's gonna show up in food prices. And as you say, by September, I'm going to even go you one better and say by this summer we're going to just be in miserable condition. But it's not. It's not. What about the farmers? They use a lot of heavy equipment to
Right.
plant the crops, to harvest the crops and stuff, diesel and so on. All that price of all that's exploding. It just ricochets throughout the economy. It cascades and cascades and cascades. There was a time now when I was a young guy, and I was a conservative when I was a young guy, and um, conservatives used to talk about unintended consequences. You
Mm-hmm.
know, if you do this here, if you won't let the farmers, run irrigation in their crops here, then you're going to have less food and prices go, whatever. It was called unintended consequences. We call it second and third order effects. So the first order is, you're going to bomb Iran and make them fall to their knees. That's the first order. But what's the second order? Well, petroleum prices go higher. Okay, what's the third order? Well, Americans deplete their savings if they have any to keep the house warm in the winter. Or I saw this weekend, it was over 100 degrees, first time earliest in history in the deserts around Phoenix to air condition their homes. So you don't have to air condition. You can swelter in 110 degrees. Who cares? But that's secondary effect. All this stuff, and what you mentioned about the fertilizers and stuff, that's another second, third, fourth generation effect of all this. Nobody thought about this. And to go back to the first of our conversation, nobody thought about it because they thought they could clear out the Persian Gulf with no trouble and didn't think it would be a problem. And they didn't think about evacuating Americans and people, and they didn't think about our bases in the petroleum Gulf nations. They didn't think about any of that. Apparently, they didn't think about running out of radars and stuff. They didn't think about any of this. President Trump thought it would be like June. We'll lob some.
Mhm.
We'll yeah, we'll
Some
send
bombs and just come back home. We'll be good.
yeah, and then I go here, Jerome, I go and look at the stock price of, um, I can't even remember their name now, the makers of, Tomahawk, Raytheon Corporation.
Right there.
Wanna
Okay,
see a
yeah.
great stock chart?
Yeah.
Straight up. Straight
Straight
up like
up, man. Yeah.
about like
Yeah. That's
about like
definitely what
this,
happened.
It's
Uh-huh.
just really nice.
Yeah, stuff. So because to me, like I say, I'm a strategist and shit. I'm not in the war room, I'm not at the war college. I'm not in the planning room or whatever, but you would think that someone would probably and they probably did because I hear General Kane say that we probably couldn't do because we don't have the ammo. But like you say, the second and the third things that come after this war, okay? So is Trump being controlled, I guess, by the same forces he said that he was going to fight, or did he choose this just being Trump? Did he want this to be his legacy? Did he want to be the guy that the mighty guy that took down the big bad Iran? I guess you're muted. I think you
Yeah.
muted yourself.
I
Yeah, there
I
you go.
said
Say that again.
you have a way. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you have a way of asking some good questions I can't really answer, and I've puzzled that and I've pondered that for a long time. And um, there's some sort of relationship there that with Netanyahu that I can barely believe. I can barely believe it, and I know that Sheldon Adelson and his wife and stuff are very, very much responsible for a huge amount of the Trump election. They threw money at him because they had more money than anybody on the
Right.
face of the earth, practically, and they threw a lot of money at him. I guess he was a casino owner. He had a casino that went bankrupt. They might have been the ones that bailed him out. I don't know any of that backstory, but I know that he's gotten a lot of money from people whose allegiance apparently, think Mrs. Adelson said on TV just recently at the White House, she said, well, he said, who do you prefer, the United States or Israel? And she kind of like, oh, I don't remember. She couldn't make herself clear and say the United States. So, there's something going on, and in the web, people speculate about like, well, it sure drove the Jeffrey Epstein story off the front pages, and it did, but I don't know the answer, and I wonder, like everybody else, what are all the elements that went to work? But he's certain there's never been a head of state that's shown up in the Oval Office 6 times, 7 times in a year, but
Yeah,
Netanyahu did.
absolutely. And all right, so the Empire of Lies, the fragments from the memory hole. So why does that title matter right now in this exact moment? And what is the one thing that you want someone watching the show to walk away from this book,
Yeah.
the understanding?
Well, a couple of things. I want you to see the pattern because they're going to work the pattern again. It's the same pattern. We've discussed what they did in the first Gulf War, and we've discussed a little bit of what they did in the second Gulf War or the Iraq War. We've discussed what they've done in all of these other wars over and over again. So I really identify the pattern, and I want to lay the blame. I want to lay the blame at where it belongs. A lot of it with the deep state. We've talked about the media and their complicity.
Mhm.
The deep state, I call that the executive arm of the global American military empire. And I don't want, when people get done with this book, they're not going to think that it's just Brennan and Clapper at the head of the CIA and the intelligence that are the
Right.
deep state or the head of the FBI. It works its way all the way down through the bureaucracy. You'll remember the guy named, I think his name was Vindman. Was it Arthur
Oh,
Vindman? Who,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
with
he was
the
a lieutenant
Ukraine
colonel.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, right,
National Security Council. He's the guy that got the ball rolling on Trump's first impeachment.
right.
And what was his complaint?
The
He
phone call? Was that
Yeah,
the
he
phone
told
call?
Congress under oath, he said, "Well, the problem is that the president is not following," get this, "the president is not following the interagency consensus." And you go, I just read the Constitution when I was eighth grade. I haven't looked at it since, but I don't remember the interagency consensus.
Mhm.
Who elects the interagency? Who profits from the interagent? Do they vote? Is it public? Is it secret? Who are the members? Can I be in on their meetings? There's no such thing. It doesn't exist in the United States. The interagency consensus is a cover term for the deep state, and they mean the permanent bureaucracy that decides everything. So I want the reader of the book, they'll enjoy all the juicy stuff because the stuff about, Bill O'Reilly and Brian Williams stuff, that's the juicy stuff. It's got a lot more like that in there. But in
Oh, yeah.
addition to that, you'll see how the deep state operates so that you'll know exactly where we're going and what will happen at the fork in the road. Because if we don't start requiring the truth out of our leadership, then our fate is certain one way. If we were to require truth out of our leadership, and frankly, between us guys, Jerome, I don't think we will. I think we're too far too late. If we don't, then we take another path, and it's not going to be very pretty. And what you've described as happening in by the fall, and I think maybe even earlier, is going to grow and grow and grow from there. And so people need to know what's coming so that they can take steps to prepare and protect themselves and their family. So that's what the book is really about.
Yeah, I think so, as well, because I tell people a lot of the times, and of course people argue with me, but I don't care. I just put out what I think is correct, that you're being gaslit by the government.
That's so true.
If you think, if I mean, you can just watch President Trump's truths, how he says something, and then he'll say something that contradicts what he says. He says, "Oh, we're winning the war. Hey, I need help over here. Can all you other countries come and help us, break up in the Straits of Hormuz? But the war is over."
Yeah.
And oh, Iran just launched, number 51, wave 51, over at our bases in Israel, and I mean, it's just all of this rhetoric, and the government is lying to you, and definitely people need to prepare, for this, and especially this upcoming food thing. I mean, that really touches me a lot because I have a family farm down in Alabama, and I know what my sister is going through right now. As far as the fertilizer and planting season, things like that, and what all the farmers are going through. And if that's affecting them now, it's going to affect us here shortly.
Yeah.
And with the gas prices, I don't know how high oil is going to go up. We don't know how long this is going to take. I mean, President Trump says we've won the war, but we're sending 5,000 Marines over now. So we don't know where this is going to take place. But, the last question I'll ask you, and I'll let you put that into perspective, because you've been right consistently documentably right, right? And
Yeah,
so
thank
when
you.
the establishment has been, especially when all the establishment, and you talk about the Uniparty, Dems and R, they've been catastrophically wrong. Does anything ever change, or are we really doomed to, and I don't want to be the doom and gloom guy, but hey, it is what it is, right? Are we really doomed to keep repeating this cycle? And what do you want the American people to do right now? Not just to think, but do. And one thing I know I want them to do is the first step we honestly, I believe we need to make is we need to fire, and that means re-elect in this country, but we need to fire all 535 people that are
Oh,
sitting in our Congress right now, because every last one of them have obfuscated and and have not and has, I guess, went against their oath of office, because none of them are um, staying with their oath of office. I know the oath that I took, and I know they took the same oath as far as the Constitution of the United States. So, and they're not doing that, and they're not respecting the oath. So, go ahead, you can have the
well,
last word on this.
I'm glad I met you because we're on the same page and we need to clean house and it's all if they all went that'd be great and all the senior people in the bureaucracy, when Clapper got caught lying to the Congress, he lied to the Congress. He said, "Are you surveilling the American people?" And no. Well, when he got caught, he said, "Well, I gave I gave the least untruthful answer that I could give." Well, when you get sworn in, you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, not the least untruthful. So we've got a really clean house. Start with the 535. That's great, and get rid of a lot of these other clowns as well. Um, here is the problem. It's like nobody wants to be a doom and gloomer, and I don't like it myself, and you don't want to be one. And so all I'm saying is, we're going 80 miles an hour down the road, and I have been actually down there and seen that there's a bridge out around the curve. So I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. I'm just saying, if you don't want to go off that bridge, you got to slam on the brakes now and get off the road because, right around that corner, that's where the bridge is out. So that it's not doom and gloom. It's just, fair warning to the people. And my fair warning to the people is we focused a little bit on food, just on that aspect of what's coming. During the Great Depression, the last depression, the Great Depression, most Americans had some ties, and I would say the majority of the American people had some ties to the farm economy. They may have gone off to the city to be shoe salesmen, or they may have gone off to work in a factory somewhere. But the family still had a farm somewhere, and it might not have been big or it might have been huge. But everybody, most of the people in the country had some sort of a tie during a time when people couldn't afford to buy an apple. They had
Right.
some sort of ties to farms that they could get back and at least they could keep themselves fed and make themselves busy doing farm work and stuff. And it was very helpful. And that's not the case anymore. You're lucky that you have a farm down in Alabama, and the people that have connections, something like that, will suffer less. For the people that don't, it's going to be a huge cash drain if they have to get their food at the grocery store. So all I want to say is there's a bridge out around the curve, and you can take steps to prepare yourself. And it's not doom and gloom. I'm just saying if you don't take steps to rein in your government, basically, I put it even another way: if you don't start demanding the truth out of these people, then our fate is sealed. I mean, a country of liars, a country that doesn't honor the truth, is willing, everybody's willing to lie to get ahead, lie, cheat, and steal. If everybody's willing to lie and give the least distrustful answer and to make up stories about the threat and so on, if you're going to live in a country of lies, the biggest liars are the ones that get on top. If we're going to put up with that, if we're going to continue to live that way, then we're not going to have a happy future. And that's just, the money has to be honest, but they've lied to us about the money. It's a dishonest counterfeit money. They've lied to us about the wars. It's a dishonest, but it's a great wealth transfer to Raytheon.
Yeah.
So, so if it's up to the people, are you going to listen to your lying congressman anymore? Are you going to demand that the American people start telling us the truth? Are you going to demand it of the news people when they get caught lying about their own harrowing war experiences? Are you going to sit there and watch them again next time they come on TV because they're liars? So if we don't upvalue the truth, then we'll deserve our fate. But anyway, we're in for a bad period, and I hope it's very limited. That's all I can say.
Definitely, definitely. Guys, go buy the book Empire of Lies, Fragments from the Memory Hole. Charles Goyette, New York Times best-selling author, man. Thank you. You are more than welcome to come back into the Lion's Den anytime, man. A great conversation. I'm glad I met you as well, sir.
Yeah.
And thank you for bringing truth to the Lion's Den. We appreciate that.
And thank you for being a home for truth. And I really enjoyed it, Jerome. Thanks so
Yes,
much.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time. Thanks, Charles.
Okay, good. Sounds good.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, there you are, guys. Wrap up the Radical Republicans live show here on Sunday night. We've been at right at 2 hours, but we got a couple more. Let me see if anybody got any questions in the chat, man. Yeah, I know you guys been listening tentatively. We appreciate it. Alex, Walton, I see you. Thanks for joining in. Jamie, like I said, I see you, man. We appreciate y'all tuning in tonight and walking through everything with us tonight. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the show and you enjoyed the guests. But we are still at war, and it still ain't worth a thing. So you guys be safe. Watch out. Keep your heads on the swivel. We'll see you guys next week. Same time, same place, 8 p.m. Radical Republicans live show. I am your host, Chief Jarome Bell, and we'll see you all next week. Peace.
What is it good for? Absolutely. Listen to me. Oh, I despise. Cause it means destruction of innocent lives. War means tears to thousands of mothers die when their sons go off to fight and lose their lives. I said war. Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely. Get said again. Lord. What is it good for? Absolutely. Listen to me. It ain't nothing but a heartbreak. Friend only to the undertaker. Is an enemy to all mankind. The thought of war blows my mind. War has caused unrest within the younger generation. Induction, then destruction. Who wants to die? War. Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely. Said. Oh, yeah. What is it good for? Absolutely. Listen to me. It ain't nothing but a heartbreaker. It's got one friend, that's the undertaker. That shattered many young men's dreams. Made him disabled, Billy and me. Life is much too short and precious. It's been fighting wars each day. War can't give life, it can only take it away. War. Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely. Say it again. Lord. What is it good for? Absolutely. Listen to me. It ain't nothing but a heartbreaker. Friend only to the undertaker. Please love and understand and tell me it's not no place for them today. They say we must fight to keep our freedom, but Lord knows there's got to be a better way.